Hello, thank you all for coming. I'm Natalie Ike. I'm the president of Tau Beta Pi, which is the Engineering Honor Society. We're the organization that is hosting this town hall today. Laura Patterson, who is the university's CIO, which is Chief Information Officer, has graciously agreed to come speak to us today. So take it away, Laura.
Thank you. And I want to say thanks to Michael Hinn for including me in this, inviting me. He is a member of the IT Council, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And someday we'll need to replace him, so I'll be looking for volunteers. If this interests you at all, then please let us know. So the IT Council is the university's governance body for IT. And what that means is we have brought together some faculty, some students, some administrators, and some deans. And we organized around what we call the domains of the university's mission. So we have people who are focused on research, the university's future in research, and what that means we will need in our technology infrastructure to enable the kind of research that goes on at the university, and especially in a place like College of Engineering. We have a group, that group, by the way, is led by Eric Mickelson. I don't know if any of you have happened to have Professor Mickelson. He is a professor in computer science engineering. And he is the domain steward, working with faculty in all areas of research, not just engineering. We have a domain for teaching and learning, and that is led by James Hilton, who is the Dean of Libraries and the Vice Provost for Digital Learning Initiatives. And he is working with faculty and students to think about the future of teaching and learning, and what that means we need in technologies for, first of all, for example, the replacement of C tools and what the next learning platform should be. The third area we call knowledge, and that area is looking at how the university can capture and preserve all the things that are created digitally here and all the things that we want to digitize, so that they are available to everyone who should have access, not just at the university, but globally, to all the amazing resources at the University of Michigan. And the fourth area is called patient care, and that's a group of faculty and staff who are looking at the clinics across the university. The university has a number of clinics, the largest being the hospital. But we have a dental clinic, we have the School of Pharmacy, we have the Depression Center, the Psych Clinic. All of those clinics have sensitive patient information. And so this group is looking at what we need in our infrastructure to protect those assets, and can we share systems across clinics. We also have a group that's looking at the administrative systems. So those are the systems that support the university's business functions. And we have a group that's focused on security and privacy. So if any of those things are of interest to you, I'd be delighted to get you plugged into the right groups so that you could contribute to the university's planning. Because what we are trying to do is identify and implement the next generation technologies that the university needs in order to stay a leading university of the world. We recognized about 4 years ago that Michigan, frankly, was starting to fall behind in the technology that we provide. And we developed a strategy called NextGen Michigan to try to not just catch up, but move ahead in our technology infrastructure. And I use that word infrastructure very generally. I don't just mean the physical infrastructure. I mean the policies, the support, all of the things that make technology easily available to the people who should have access to it. And so this little graphic I use around campus a lot to talk about NextGen Michigan, which is what we call this initiative. And the words NextGen Michigan are in the cloud, and they're in the cloud for two reasons. First of all, we made an assumption that we would be heavily leveraging cloud technologies, that the technology that the university has in place right now, and even our model for how we support technology is really kind of in the 90s. And that as technology, we are in a significant paradigm shift in technology, in the move to mobility and cloud services. And so we put the words NextGen Michigan in the cloud to indicate we think we'll be leveraging the cloud services. But the second reason it's in the cloud is because, frankly, we don't yet know exactly what it is. It's a little fuzzy. And in fact, it's emerging because we are getting out now to talk with as many groups as we can. And I will tell you, you should be proud. You're the first student group that I've talked with about NextGen Michigan. But we are trying to get as much information as we can about what people are trying to do and what we need to build in our next generation technologies. And the university is preparing to make some pretty big investments in technology, and so it's important that we talk with a lot of people. So we started at the base of this graphic by putting in place the IT Council, that's our governance group, because we needed input from all across the university. And Michigan is so big and very decentralized, and so we said, who gets to make the decisions about what we're going to invest in? And so that's why we pulled together this group and organized them by the domains of the mission of the institution: research, teaching, and learning. Then we brought central groups together to create ITS. And we started to work on what we call IT rationalization, and you may have heard some about this. The goal of IT rationalization is to drive out the unnecessary cost that the university currently experiences in our 1990s model of IT. So let me give you some examples that will hit home to students from the College of Engineering. Right now, just about every department on campus runs its own IT shop. And I don't just mean every school, I mean every department. So here, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, electrical engineering, everybody runs their own IT shop. That is not a bad thing. In fact, that's a good thing. The bad thing is, in those various departments, something like 180 of them all over campus, people are doing infrastructure work, things that have really become commodity IT repeatedly, over and over in every department. They aren't doing the innovative edge technologies that Michigan could and should be known for. And so the goal of IT rationalization says we should consolidate where it makes sense to consolidate. So two examples that you can identify with that you might not even be in favor of, but at least you know now why it happened. When we launched this effort, we did a count across campus of, gosh, we don't even know the technology that's running all over this place. We found out there were 44 email services on the Ann Arbor campus. Now, let me say that again. On the Ann Arbor campus, there were 44 email services. That's when we made the decision to go to Google. And we decided on Google based on the input that we got. I'd be happy to open the door here. Come on in. Oh, yeah. We decided on Google based on the input that we got from campus, not because we were so concerned about email, but because we wanted to start to build a collaboration platform where people could work together. Because what we heard was coming is more team-based science, team-based research, team-based learning. And that people want to be able to collaborate anytime, anywhere, and they want to access their documents from mobile devices. That's why we chose Google. Now, there are a lot of people unhappy with that decision, especially in the administration and the faculty. But it was this next-gen vision that led us, and the redundancy running on campus that led us to, let's go to one system, not 44, and let's go to Google. A second change that has occurred is the College of Engineering used to run its own backbone. So there was a backbone network for the College of Engineering and one on campus. The reason that engineering ran its own network, they put that network up in the 1980s when network computing was just emerging. And they said, we want our students to learn about networking, and we want our faculty to do research on networking, so we're going to build our own network. Now, in 2014, they said, the network is a commodity. Let's get rid of CAEN and merge it into the university's network. And so those types of what are actually pretty significant changes are underway. But those changes are only a step to get us to NextGen Michigan. And so what we really want to understand in NextGen Michigan is what are the technologies that we should put in place that allow people to be mobile, that allow for a lot of social interaction, and that operate at scale. Because definitely the trajectory of technology is at scale. And so, for example, when we did Michigan, we like to think we're pretty big. You know, we've got 44,000 students and 35,000 employees. And I said to Google, how do you guys describe scale? What does scale mean to Google? And they said, we start at 1 million. 1 million records, 1 million people. That's when you're starting to talk about scale. And so we are in this paradigm move where the ability to bring data together at scale has big implications for what we need in our infrastructure. So these are the things that are driving our strategy and our thinking. And what the strategic plan says is, keep consolidating where it makes sense. We don't need 44 email services. We don't need 102 help desks, which is what the university has right now, 102 help desks. Keep consolidating where it makes sense, but encourage redundancy where there is a need for it for innovation and creation of new things on campus. Secondly, invest in technologies that will enable teaching to occur, learning, research. That's where we want the money to go. And nurture the whole IT community, whether departmental and central, to work together to provide a higher level of service than you get today. So we worked with people across campus, and we published version 1.0 of the plan. Now, I warn you, it is very high level. It covers all of these things. It paints a vision for where Michigan thinks we will be 3 to 5 years out. We found out that it's just impossible to look more than 5 years out. Technology changes too fast. And so we asked people to look 3 to 5 years out in these areas and describe what they believed the university would need in its technology. That plan is available on the CIO website. And if you could take even 15, 20 minutes, a half hour to go there you can post comments on every section of the plan. From your experiences as a student, what do you want to see in the infrastructure? Or your experience as a research assistant, what do you need? What tools is it difficult for you to use here, or they're too hard to access? Or what software do you not have access to that you could use? We want your input, because that plan is guiding the investments that the university is going to make. And I mean investments like in the millions of dollars of investments that, that we intend to make. So one example is, right now, back to this decentralized 1990s approach, many departments run their own wireless network. And we are going to move the wireless infrastructure to true infrastructure. We are going to make big investments in the wireless infrastructure here, across the university, focusing on public spaces and academic spaces, classrooms and labs. And the idea is that wherever you go as a student, that you can be connected. That you don't, right now, if you go to certain buildings on campus, you can't connect to the wireless network unless you use the guest network, which is insecure, unprotected. And we are going to change that by making big investments to improve the coverage and the capacity and have a standard wireless network across the university. That's just one example. And the reason that wireless went to the top of the list, I actually give the students on the IT Council credit for that, because they were the ones that spoke up and said, we are so frustrated by the wireless network here, and it's embarrassing. And on WTF, What to Fix at Michigan, I read very clearly that the wireless network was a top priority, and so it is at the top of the list. So that's why I'm here, and that's what the council has been focused on. Finally got the first version of the plan out, and so I am here to hear any and all questions, comments, input, ideas that you want to give. Kathy is here with me to take notes as fast as she can. And then I'm going to encourage you again before I leave to please go to the website and put your comments in. And if you want to skip sections, it's organized section by section. You can skip the things you're not interested in and post into the things that you are. And let me warn you again, some sections are very, very high level. They kind of paint a direction, but they don't yet make assumptions about technology. Some of the sections are more specific, like the section on infrastructure says we might as well get rid of the landline voice service because nobody's going to be using it within 3 years. And so let's phase that out and do more about the cellular coverage on campus, for example. So I'm going to pause there and open it up to questions. I see a funny look on your face.
Well, my research group has multiple labs. And the landlines are very key for talking back and forth between the labs.
So I shouldn't say we're going to get rid of the landline. We are looking at alternatives. The equipment that we have is going to be at end of life. The university runs its own. We run our own telephone service. Now, you know, telephone's commodity, and now voice over Wi-Fi is where things are going, VoIP. And so what's happening is that the utilization of the landlines is dropping amazingly. I mean, the average number of calls to a landline phone are 2 calls a month. And yet we have this whole infrastructure. And so we're looking at where we can move to cellular, where we can move to VoIP, and understanding for life safety reasons, and now maybe for research reasons. In some places we will still need to have some landline service, but we're going to scale it way back. We don't need the 33,000 desk sets and lines that we currently have.
So I can totally agree with you about the Wi-Fi stuff, because I actually work in one of those buildings where they have their own system, so BSR on medical campus. And so I don't know how you're gonna let the whole university use the same Wi-Fi, because they actually, their own Wi-Fi system has a level 2 password. So it's related to like patient privacy and stuff. So do you want like a brand new engineering network there, or you want like the medical people to be more open-minded to engineering people on there? And I also want to consult you about like how do you strategically place CAEN labs across campus? Because I noticed like from where I work, like BSRB, the closest CAEN lab is on North Campus, which is like so far away. I really would hope, because there are so many engineers working in my building, and also like the medical campus, on medical campus in general. So I wonder why there isn't a single CAEN lab there. So a good place to place that would be like, in my mind, like a Topman library. That would be like across the street from me. Or like even in my building, that would make me really happy. And another thing, someone suggested me to use the remote access, and I actually did try that to access the CAEN lab resources remotely, but maybe it's just because I'm not a CS major, and this is totally naive sounding, because I hate whenever that thing die on me, like from time to time, all the time. And I don't have my work saved, and intuitively, I always hope that there's this function that would help me save my work on the remote desk directly to my own desk, instead of me uploading it to my box and then downloading it again from my desk later. Is there an easy way to implement that that would really help like a non-CS person like me a lot? Thank you.
So I empathize with you because I'm a non-CS person. So let's talk for a little bit about the public computing sites, because we are getting ready the next academic year, so in a few months, to actually launch an initiative as part of NextGen to understand what we need in the next generation of computing sites. And so one of the things I'm hearing is to stop thinking about again, the model of the public computing sites reflects this thinking of technology on a department by department basis or unit by unit, and not recognizing that students and faculty are mobile, they're everywhere, and that we have interdisciplinary programs like biomedical research, and this looking at the technology on a unit by unit basis is a barrier to those kinds of programs. And so part of what we're struggling with is the labs are still so heavily utilized, but over 90% of the students who come to Michigan bring their own computers. And so is it really the software that you're after, or is it really that you do still want a physical space because you don't want to carry your laptop with you all day? Or so can you tell me a little bit, and then there will be an initiative to get a lot more information about the future of the labs and what we actually need there.
Oh, you are asking me?
Yeah.
Oh.
You or anybody who wants to help me understand if you're going after the software and that's why you go to a lab, or if you still also need a physical space. If we can fix the remote problems.
Yes, definitely the softwares, but also the infrastructure, because if I run the console on my laptop computer, it's going to burn it, I believe. So the desktop, the high quality, fast speed computing, physical computer is needed as well. But one thing I could see that can bridge this is to license individual labs, like my own lab, which provides the students working in the lab with high quality, high speed computer, to license those labs as CAEN labs, so that you don't really have to have a concentrated spot for a CAEN lab. Instead, you just license out the CAEN labs to the individual
To the
research
physical
labs.
space.
Yes.
Oh, to the research labs.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I could see that as a possible solution to this. So basically, you're not. So it would lessen the burden on the university to maintain a CAEN lab in a less demanding area, like in a medical campus. But then it would help the individual labs a lot by being able to access that on their own infrastructure.
That's a really creative idea. Can you give me some more input about the labs and the future? Think about the future of the computing labs.
So for me, when I need a specific software, I always go to a CAEN computer because I know they have it. And when I connect to the virtual site, it'll take a ridiculous amount of time to use the same software. There's this one program we use, and whenever I enter a new letter into it, it will go through the entire line on the screen and go through every single one and then put the next letter in. So it'll take me 20 minutes to enter a sentence if I want to. So I always go to a CAEN network for that. But if that could be fixed with higher cloud computing power, I would use a virtual site much more often.
There are two issues with as we said, with the remote access to the CAEN lab computers. One of them is that they're very slow to use them, and the other one is you can just use one core at a time. You cannot do multi-processing in that. And for that, I guess if we can use the software on our computers and then just use the internet for the license verification, I think that would solve some of the problems. But we don't have access to the CAEN software. I've asked them to give me the software and check the license online, but they just don't do it.
For me, half of the time I want to use the software, and half of the time I want to use the computer there. But I really find that especially in the high demand time around 9, and when I use the remote desktop connect thing, a lot of times that there are 0 computers available, and and also sometimes I really think that the remote desktop thing is good because a lot of times you really want to use the software for a little while, and you may want to save your chip to the CAEN lab. So I'm not sure how currently the remote desktop thing is used. Since I think there might be some better ways to deal with the problem of the high demand time.
Maybe that's something you should have a student project. Seriously. Actually, this is an oversimplification of everything. That's one of the biggest challenges in running infrastructure, of course, is that you have to build the infrastructure for the peak period, and then a lot of the time it goes unused, and so it's not very cost effective. And so what you find is that often you don't meet the peak demand. But this has come through often enough as a problem. It was one of the questions that came in early, and it came in multiple times. This problem of during peak periods, you just can't get to the remote.
Another reason why the CAEN labs are that good is they have big monitors. So if you're trying to design something, and you're trying to do it on a laptop that has 15 inches or something, and you have a lab that has 26 inches, it's much easier. So, especially for design software, CAEN labs are very good.
Just to add on to that, I have noticed that it seems like there's some variety, and certain CAEN labs have slightly bigger monitors, and those ones are the most busy almost always. So it seems like people are either figuring it out, or maybe it's a weird coincidence, but that definitely does seem to make a difference.
That's good input.
I just thought of this when you said about building the infrastructure for peak hour and then underutilized they are underutilized under like low demanding hour, like at night or like 3 a.m. I just thought maybe the university can build a collaboration network across the globe. Like I would really think the Chinese universities who get up 12 hours away from us would want a peak hour at 2 a.m. our time. So it would be like helping everybody to share the resource with, like they can access remote access.
Right, right.
Then that would solve all the problems.
So to tell you the truth, we don't even have to go to China. There's a whole bunch of administrators that go home at 5 o'clock, and their computers are not being used until 8 o'clock the next morning. And so we are looking at high throughput computing by taking advantage of those unused cycles. You know, it's mixed results, but certainly we could do a better job of utilizing what we have. So your point's a really good one. So what else? Moving off of the computing sites, as you think about your life here as a student and what you would like to see, or looking 3 years out, what you're going to need, what else can you tell us?
So I guess first, comment on the question. I just wanted to say thanks for the whole EduRoam thing.
Oh, thank you.
At a university, and didn't have to fight with the guest network or like the every hour clicking the yes, I'm still on the computer network. It was really great.
So I became the CIO 4 years ago, and I said that was the first thing I was going to do, and it took 4 years. But thank you for noticing. I really appreciate it. Really.
And then a question about, I guess, the Wi-Fi capacity problems that we had this fall. How do you project student, or I guess Wi-Fi usage, right? Like, because from what it sounds like, one of the biggest problems was just an increased number of devices everywhere all the time. Do you see this trend continuing? Are we going to have to deal with this every fall?
You know, we have that question a lot. I do see the trend continuing. First of all, the average number of devices that incoming students brought this year was 5 wireless devices, which means some people had more than 5. And, you know, how many do you carry around with you at a time? Probably 3. Like right now, how many of you have 3 wireless devices with you right at this, on your person? So that kind of surprises me. I often have 3, laptop, tablet, and my phone. And they're all turned on, and so when I walk into a room, they're all trying to connect. One of the biggest problems we had, to tell you the truth, was in the residence halls that people not only brought their own devices, but they brought their own routers. And so then their routers are interfering with the infrastructure that we have built in the residence halls. And so that was actually a cause of a lot of the problem. But yes, we do see the trend continuing. Not only do we see people continuing to bring that number and more wireless devices, but the whole Internet of Things and all of the potential things that will attach to monitor buildings and location and all the instrumentation. And so it is actually a concern that CIOs talk about a lot, is trying to stay ahead of the consumption of Wi-Fi. It's difficult to predict. I mean, we were caught on our heels. We thought we were in great shape, and we were really caught on our heels this fall. So that's part of the reason the investment's being made. I will also tell you that when we suggested to students in the residence halls that you don't have to have everything on the wireless network. We have Ethernet connections. Why don't you go over and buy an Ethernet cord? Incoming first-year students, freshman students said, what's an Ethernet cord? I mean, they just expected that everything was Wi-Fi enabled.
Do you also in charge of the drinking services?
Yes.
I had a question about how are you maximizing best way of doing the distribution of the printing sites?
So, right, this year we're not doing a very good job. But one of the things that we are preparing to roll out is kind of like what you used to have and then lost for a while. And it's called Follow Me. And it will enable you to print anywhere on campus from a printer that has a card reader using your ID. And so it's to try to enable printing from anywhere, all over campus, and that you can track the number of prints that you do just by a card swipe. We have that in place, some places on central campus now, but we have not extended it across the whole university. We are struggling with, and I sure would, as we next year start really looking seriously at student computing needs, I would like some input. You know, we've got some groups on campus who think we should charge for every single page to try to incentivize people not to print and to be very careful when they do. Then we have some groups on campus that think we shouldn't charge at all, that all printing should be free. We have students, every year I get a few nasty email messages that say you should be doing duplex printing in all of the sites in order to save paper. Why don't you care about sustainability? And we try to explain that, you know, a lot of times when people are printing at the sites, they're printing a thesis and they don't want duplex printing. And so it's just, we're trying to meet a whole variety of needs, and right now I think we're not doing the best job of it. So printing and understanding printing needs and how best to meet those is something I'd really like to hear about.
In my case, I think I'm working in the ERP building, and in the whole building I don't find a public printer, and that's really very embarrassing when I want to print something.
Now say that again?
I'm working in the ERP building, the engineering research building.
Right.
In the whole building, there's not a single public printer.
Really?
I
think we can fix that.
Yeah, it's good. We do have some, in our department, we do have some rooms that's open to our department, and we can print during the daytime, but after the person who's in that office just went back home, we don't have access to the printer. Because that's sometimes I need to go to the computer or to the cooling instead to get a single page of printing. That's really bad. And also, I think it's not very important to have multiple printers at the base, but it's good that maximize the distribution of it so that we get access.
We did, at the Rackham Student Government meeting last year, we learned that there is no public printer in Rackham, and so we fixed that pretty quickly. So I'll see what if we can do something about that. There and then here.
Going on to your question about charging for prints and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that I would personally against making charges for every print, because I know every single person at least university probably prints at least once a year, probably multiple times. I know that I all my PowerPoint notes for like all my classes and stuff like that. So I think it would be a detriment to charge every print, because you always have people who print like 1,000 pages a semester because they have long stories to read, essays to type all the time. And then I feel like it's not really fair to them. I can understand the people who don't print at all and why they wouldn't want to pay for the prints that they already have forever, but I just think it's more fair to everybody just to have like the allotment that we already have. I think the system that's in place is actually really good for most people.
Is it?
At least for engineers, I don't have a problem. I've never been close to my age limit, so.
So does your current allotment meet most people in the room? It meets your needs? Oh.
I was just going to comment on, you were talking about the duplex issue, not to be one of those people that are complaining or anything, but I just thought of the idea before of just making the default for like mprint, for instance, like making the default to be duplex, and then obviously people that, because I think a lot of people just are like not mindful of it and they don't even think that's an option. So obviously, if you're printing something like a thesis paper or something, you want to, you can even have the option of choosing to do it single-sided, but to make the default for people that don't even think about it.
So how many of you think the default should be two? That's really good feedback. Steve said it used to do that. Maybe we can. Yeah, right. We can solve two things.
I do also appreciate that there's a greater connectivity between print and different services now. You can print straight from C-Tools now, which that was so great. You don't have to download it and re-upload it. It was like a waste of a minute every time you wanted to print something in Google Drive. And being able to print, there's a mobile M-Print now, so those are all great. More stuff like that, keep it coming because it's really good.
So when you say more stuff like that, does anything come to mind? Or the list is so long?
No, I mean just, the other student collaboration websites, things like that. Great.
I appreciate that. There was a hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much the only time I really use the desktop, like CAEN computers, is for printing. And I don't know if this has been an issue that's been resolved, but a lot of times when we print off PDFs, it doesn't print correctly, so it'll like black out images.
Yes. Yeah. It's PDF to Word.
So I have to print from a desktop rather than just printing it by print.
It's an issue with the alpha transparency not being handled properly. It's bad.
It happens a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can get more information on it because she also mentioned that some of the scan copy of the notes, it prints a black background and a white foreground. That brings a lot of ink and also it's not
Just a comment to like a possible solution for balancing the free need for people to print for the coursework and the need of people like to conserve paper. So basically, when I was taking classes, I need to print more than 1,000 a semester. But then now, when I'm all done with the classes, I still have the same quota, but I print like less than 50 pages a semester on the campus. So of course, I print in my lab. So I think a possible solution is to refund people or credit the unused paper quota for the semester. So then they will be mindful to print less, but then if they need, they can still use the full quota without having to like pay by page. That would just cause a lot of congestion.
So you mean like rollover minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, rollover.
Yeah, so, and also I happen to know that a lot of LSA students are like really in shortage of printing quota, so I'm like inclined to sell them my quota.
Well, I have to tell you that there's a, I think it's mostly undergraduate student advisory, College of Engineering student advisory group that I usually try to meet with once a year. And last year somebody told me that he prints off blank pages to take for all of his allotment and then takes the paper home.
Yeah.
At the end of it. Right. You do that?
Well, I mean, I've done that, and I had a friend who he had 800 pages left, so he printed off a bunch of pages of kittens and just posted them all. I've had people who just like, oh, I have a PDF version of a textbook, I'll print it off and try to sell it to somebody. Like, just because they have so many extra pages.
So there you go, right? That's why it stumps me what to do about this.
One thing that maybe, I don't know how feasible it would be for it to be considered off campus, I guess, but like maybe to have some like wireless like places off campus where the most populous like student areas are. So like on South Campus, like down by Pack and stuff like that, there's really nowhere we can go. Like to the probably one of the closer places that we can go to like get access to the wireless network and stuff like that. I think it might be beneficial to have like some type of wireless access beyond like Comcast, which is horrendous, to like have access to internet when we need to.
You mean like in living spaces or in public spaces?
I mean either one. There's not really too many public spaces in the suburbs, like in the outside areas, but I mean still. I don't know, I don't even know if that's feasible to do. But
I don't know. So the challenge we get into there, that's an interesting idea, but we have to be very careful about not competing with the private sector. You know, because we're not for profit and we take business from them. But I will tell you that there is, you probably are acquainted with the Google Fiber to the Home. And we've been working for the past couple of years. When Google first offered that and they selected Kansas City, Ann Arbor, we worked with the city of Ann Arbor to put in a proposal. Obviously we weren't chosen. But since then, we've been working with the city of Ann Arbor to try to figure out how we can get high-speed connectivity to all the homes and residences in Ann Arbor. And one of the things we did talk about was that the university could target the living areas where the areas where students live off campus and partner with the city to make it available as part of what we extend. So that's sort of getting at what you're talking about. Because students have they used to have, now this fall it wasn't so great, but a good experience in the residence hall, and then when you move out to an apartment and you're using Comcast speed.
It's awful.
Yeah.
All the students have it. It's like only internet provider.
Yeah, right. And so I am pleased that finally those conversations are getting some traction. And I don't know how soon you all will be graduating. It might not occur while you're still here, but it may. It's starting to happen.
So I've tinkered around with using Box on a number of occasions as far as collaboration space goes, in particular because 50 gigs is a lot more space for research data and things like that than I think I'm now up to about 14 or 15 in Dropbox, which is just not cutting it for that kind of thing. But Box is really clunky and hard to work with. Are there other alternatives that are being explored? Are there like university, developed kind of front ends that could streamline that? Is there anything being done in that space?
So no, there really isn't anything that's actively being done. But so the university went to Box because we recognized that a lot of people were using Dropbox for sensitive university information. And with Box, we negotiated a contract on behalf of the university that gives us protection of the data. They have to notify us if there's a breach, if they're going to go out of business. They have to give us time to find an alternative and migrate everybody. And so contractual protections that you don't get with Dropbox. Box was a very, very young company, and they were absolutely elated to have the University of Michigan as a client. And I will say that it was not just Michigan. There were actually 8 universities that came together and agreed to work with them to get this offering up. And so I think they would be thrilled to get the input from students at Michigan on what would make Box better. Because they have, all the vendors we have ever worked with, they have been the most responsive to trying to meet our needs. One place where we have a gap is they don't currently have the protection for HIPAA information. I don't know if your lab has HIPAA data. And we are this close to getting an agreement with them that gives our data HIPAA protection so that all of the medical center and the hospital could also use it, which we think then will really help with collaboration. And so whatever it is that could make the interface more user-friendly, I think they would be very responsive. And we've got to get to them. They're growing pretty fast, and once they get so big, then we don't have as much influence, and so we need to move while we can. So seriously, if you just send me some things that you think would make the user experience better, or we can even offer that we have some students do some work for them.
For that, the space and the Dropbox that you mentioned, I think we now have the Google Drive, and it's like 30 gigabytes. That's like very low. I mean, for my research, I need like a very huge data storage. Now I'm using like UC San Diego data storage system, but they delete the files after like a while. They don't keep the files for a long time, like 3 months, 6 months. After that, they delete them.
Really?
I mean, that's like a scratch
Yeah.
area. So you can save it, and then after 3 months, they start to delete the files, the old files, because they want to save some data on their machine. I was thinking if you can increase the size of the Google Drive, that would be great. Or if you have Nix and Flux here, if you can like share the storage in Nix and Flux with the students, I guess that would help a lot.
So last year, I will tell you from the CIO perspective, and because many of you are researchers, you'll appreciate this. Data management and data storage, that plus the capacity of the network, are probably the two biggest challenges that we have in trying to stay ahead of what goes on here. And so last year, the executive officers approved a $2 million investment in high-speed storage for Flux and non-Flux users to specifically, to try to meet the needs of the research community. We are right now meeting with groups on campus to try to better understand what the requirements are and what people actually need. Because we know we can't satisfy everybody's needs, but to try to hit the biggest part of the population. And we've actually identified two different solutions that we think we're going to build out both. We envision in our NextGen vision for research storage that the university would actually have multiple storage solutions of different types and different speeds and different prices. So that we can meet the various needs, because the needs are so different. And frankly, we just don't have a good enough understanding of what everybody's trying to do. So that might be an area if you could go into the strategic plan and put some comments, or send me an email message, because we literally are right now, there's a group of faculty that are working with us, and they put together a survey. And we're trying to get it out to as many researchers as we can, so we understand exactly, is it scratch storage, is it archival storage, is it high speed? If high speed, how fast does it need to be? Especially from the non-Flux users. We have a better idea for Flux users, but for the non-Flux users, we just don't know enough. But I have to tell you the truth, we weren't thinking about Google Drive as the solution. We were actually looking at building something here.
I mean, that's what I use. I mean, and it's portable. I mean, you can use it everywhere, and it's safe to save data on Google more than. And I mean, every time I need to transfer data, I need to use SSH client, and I mean, it's safe, but I guess Google would be much safer. And I mean, since we talked about Flux, I mean, sometimes I need someone who knows computing and programming. So if you have if you can have a center where there are 2 people, 2 programmers, that when the students have programming issues, they can email them or send the programs when they have I mean, it took me a week to figure out when I had a cache problem, not cache.
So Eric,
the program they wrote, they had some problem in the cache line, reading the cache line. And if we can have some couple of people probably can do it.
So I don't know how many of you use CSCAR. If any of you do, the Center for Statistical Computing, SCAR, CSCAR. Anyway, it's that sort of support. They help people with their statistical analysis. We are in fact talking about building the same sort of thing to help people, to help researchers with their research computing and algorithms that they need. And Eric Nicholson, who is I already mentioned him once, he's the Associate Vice President for Advanced Research Computing, actually requested 15 people to create a team that would be available to researchers and to graduate students for exactly what you described. I know we won't get 15 people, but if we can even get 4, then it's a start. And we're thinking about pairing them up with CSCAR because we know a lot of researchers go to CSCAR for statistical support, and so it would be the same sort of service for what you're programming support. So we'll see. That budget request is being considered right now. We're 5 minutes over. Any last question? I really do appreciate this. I can't tell you. As I said, it's the first student group, and I know the engineering needs are probably the biggest on campus. And so if you do have a few minutes, I know you're getting to the end of the term and you're really busy, but go into that strategic plan and post a few comments because it's really valuable to us to get this right. Thank you. Thank you.